All right, y'all. Culver Jones with another episode in the CFBAD podcast. And right as week 0 is pretty much here, I'm going to get in to the AP poll reaction, but rather, these are more power rankings. So I'm going to give the first half of my power rankings, followed by the second half. And the way I divvied it up is the first half is teams that are quality, that are going to make some noise, could make a splash, but I really don't see them relevant for a playoff or maybe even a New Year's Six. So these are quality teams, though, where a dub against them, especially at their place, is a very good win. So I'm starting with my first few out. And the first team that I got is the UCLA Bruins. So the reasons you could rank them is Chip Kelly is a semi-proven coach in the Pac-12, and he's pretty good. Definitely an offensive wizard, concept genius, very integral in the evolution of offense in the game, right? They have a bunch of talent at quarterback, starting with Dante Moore, who's projected to be their starter. And they also got Carson Steele, who runs the hell out of the ball. And they had a good season last year. But despite that good season, they lost the legend, DTR, and they also lost Zach Charbonnet and Jake Bobo. So that was really the big three in their offense. So that's a lot to replace. And they're essentially a new team. And not only that, but they were undefeated, and they had game day, and it was looking like they were being a playoff team. DTR was getting Heisman buzz. And then after that game against the Ducks, where the Ducks really dismantled them, their season just completely fell out from under them. So that's why they narrowly missed the 25. Another team that misses it narrowly is Mississippi State. So Mississippi State Bulldogs, they're bringing back experience at quarterback for sure, and they're bringing back experience at defense and a good defensive mind in Zach Arnett taking the helm. But at the same time, you got to bring up the tragedy, R.I.P. Mike. So it's going to be a new offense, and I feel like they still haven't shown enough quite consistently. It seemed like Mike Leach had them right on the verge of having it where they were going to consistently compete in the SEC West. But I still have only seen a flash or so of that. The defense needs to show me one more year before I'll put them in the power rankings preseason. So, yep, UCLA, Mississippi State. Another team, and this is probably a team that's not getting that much buzz, but this is a team that I like, and I definitely think they could get into the top 25. And that's the Baylor Bears, coached by Dave Aranda. They got Blake Shapen and Reese in the backfield, So it's a pretty decent offense, but if it's a Dave Aranda-led team, it's going to be a defensive team. I believe in him, and I believe in Shapen, but they had a lot of close losses in 22 that they really should not have lost. They should not have lost that game against BYU. They really should have put away TCU, and that's just two to name off the top of my head. So that's kind of, if they had won a few of those games, maybe their season would have been a little different. They're only 2 years removed from a Big 12 championship, so I still think that they're a good team, and I think that last year kind of was a little bit of a fluke rather than vice versa. But, I mean, I can't rank them yet because last year they were not that good. So, yeah. Baylor narrowly misses it for me. Texas Tech, I know Tech is probably in the late 20s in a lot of people's polls, or early 20s. And they're a great team. Tyler Shaw, I don't think has lost as a starter. Period. Maybe he lost at work. He definitely has not lost as a starter or as a starter finishing the game at Texas Tech. So that's kind of an interesting stat. But, I mean, it seems like they're one step away still. They won 8 games last year, and that was good. But, I mean, Donovan Smith is gone. He did carry them through a few games for sure. So we'll see how it goes. But Definitely Tyler Shaw needs to stay healthy for them to have a chance. But, I mean, there's improvement there and there's a lot to like. And also, I really need to see it against the Ducks before. If they do well against the Ducks, then that would maybe validate the Texas Tech Red Raiders a lot more for me. So it's another one I got narrowly missing it. Moving on, this is another team a lot got ranked, and that's UTSA. They're bringing back one of the most legendary quarterbacks in college football right now, and Frank Harris. They had an awesome 22 campaign. They really only had 2 losses early on in the year, one to Texas, and that was by a decent margin. And then they lost to Houston in a triple overtime. And other than that, they pretty much won every other game except their bowl game to Troy. And Troy was actually a good team, but they didn't really play anybody else. They're losing Zachary Franklin. And yeah, so they're definitely a really good team, but like a 2-3 loss if you count the bowl game. Non-Power 5, can I really let them in? I don't know. I have Tulane in, but that's a different story because, I mean, they beat a very quality team in their bowl game, and they have more marquee wins than UTSA had because they beat Kansas State and UCF and whatnot. So that's why I don't have UTSA ranked. And speaking on which, moving on to UCF, they were a pretty good team last year too. They honestly were pretty solid and well-rounded on both sides of the football. Not a lot of teams put up a lot of big numbers on the other side of the scoreboard, and UCF actually did put a crooked number up many a time. They did have that kind of weird game against Eastern Carolina that they should not have lost, especially by that margin. And then they also lost to Navy. So those blemishes from last year are why I don't have them ranked. But at the same time, given how crazy the Big 12 is and given how crazy Gus Malzahn is, I definitely could see them as a dark horse to win that conference, honestly. And I would have no problem with them being in somebody's top 25. It's just that they narrowly missed mine just because of those blemishes a little bit. But Plumlee can stay healthy, and if that defense keeps improving, I think that they definitely could make some noise. And then moving on, these are the teams that I have ranked. So at number 25, got the North Carolina Tar Heels. They're in almost everybody's top 25. And y'all actually might think this is a little bit low for them. But, I mean, I just haven't seen enough from them yet. I like Drake May. Mac Brown is obviously one of the few coaches who has a ship, who's active. Their roster is super talented, and they had a decent 22 season, right? But they had some pretty unexplicable losses, no reason to lose to Georgia Tech and losing to NC State. And that was both right at the end of the year. And then it was not one of the best Clemson teams or Dabo Swinney-led teams. But they sure looked like one of them against North Carolina, let me tell you. So, bad losses. Haven't seen enough. That's why I have them a little bit low. But they're number 25. So, maybe if Drake May could put together the hype and if they could really dominate South Carolina in week 1, expect them to rise up the power ranking significantly. But until they do that, I'm keeping them at the bottom. Number 24. Unlike a lot of these teams, this is a team that I know exactly what I'm getting every single year. They really don't get that much ahead of this number or behind this number, in my opinion, over the last decade and a half. And that's the Iowa Hawkeyes. They have shown me so much over the years under Kirk Ferentz's tenure that I just believe in that program. And they're like Utah, but just a little bit below, where you just know they're going to come in, they're going to be physical, they're going to send guys pro, and they're just going to be a tough matchup that nobody really wants to play. And they did add Cade McNamara, which is a huge upgrade when they just had Petrus last year as their starter. So, yeah, quarterback room definitely got way better. And this is definitely going to be one of the best defenses in the country once again. But it's still probably a really bad offense. And Brian Ferentz is on the most severe of hot seats. So if that pressure sneaks in and then you have a change at offensive coordinator mid-year, who knows? It could go one direction or the other. But I just think that their defense is good enough that they're going to win 7 or 8 games. I mean, if they won 7 games last year with that historically awful offense, and if they just have a passable offense this year, I mean, pun intended, then I think that they'll be a decent team in the Big Ten West. They could win it. But other than that, they are not going to get much above the 20s. So, yeah, that's the Hawkeyes for me. And number 23, this is a team that I do not see on a lot of people's rankings. So this is kind of one of my hot takes for this lower half of the rankings. And I actually got the Boise State Broncos ranked 23rd. Everybody might be like, what the fuck, like that's not, like y'all might click off the video, especially when you find out in the next one who I don't rank. But Boise State had an awesome finish to the year last year. And their quarterback, Talon Green, is actually a stud. And I think he's insanely slept on. He's 6'5". He can fly. I saw flashes in that Oregon State game, which they lost by 14. But once they put in Talon Green, man, Boise State started putting together some offense. And I was like, wow, this dude can play. And he really continued to do that all season. I think Andy Avalos is a good coach. But, I mean, yeah, this is kind of my hot take. I definitely have already mentioned that they could cover against Washington, but I just think that Talon Green's talent is absolutely ridiculous. You got Avalos, who's a defensive-minded coach, and you also got a fairly easy schedule other than that first game. And you got one of the tougher places to play in the country, too. So I think that Boise State could definitely improve on their 10-win campaign, and they could be, once again, one of the top non-Power 5 teams like we saw under Chris Peterson and Brian Harsin. So, yeah, I like the Boise State Broncos, and I'm going to follow them up at number 22 with another team that I got ranked, and I know Shmuley really agrees with me on this one. And this is kind of our sleeper for the whole season. And that's the Maryland Terrapins. The Maryland Terrapins have consistently been getting better under Loxley's tenure. And honestly, I think it's fair to say that they have the best quarterback in the conference. Who else would you say? Aller? Well, we haven't seen anything, obviously. McNamara, no. I mean, Mordecai could be good, but he's a transfer, so we'll have to see. He's been on 2 different teams in 2 years, so yeah. It's definitely critical that Taulia Tagovailoa needs to stay healthy. And one thing I really liked about them last year, though, is they competed against Ohio State and Michigan. Penn State was a little bit of a different story, and they did lose to Wisconsin, I believe. But if they can just beat who they need to beat and maybe hang in there again with the big dogs and get a last-second field goal go their way or something, maybe they could pull off an upset. But even then, I could totally see them going 9-3. They just need their big win. But I think they're going to do it. I really love their passing attack. I definitely think it's one of the best in the Big Ten. And I think they're poised to have an upset. So that's my take on the Terrapins, number 22 in these power rankings. And moving on, we got the Ole Miss Rebels, my alma mater. Ole Miss has been pretty consistent under Kiffin. The offense has been legit ever since he walked in. Ever since that first game against Florida, I believe, was his first game. He's been great. Great speed they always got. Great weapons. he was able to transition from a little bit more of a passing attack under Corral, and basically they just ran it like hell last year. So yeah, and they did great additions in the transfer portal. Obviously, Franklin is my favorite of those, and Judkins is one of the best running backs in the country. But they kind of like UCLA had a just terrible collapse at the end of the season. That Arkansas game was awful. They totally let that Alabama game slip from them. And then, yeah, it just kind of ended up being pretty disappointing. The positive thing is they do have Sanders, but a reason why they're low is because, yeah, there is a controversy in quarterback. It still seems like Dart could play. And, yeah, I think they really need to beat Tulane for them to climb. And that brings me to the number 20 team, which is Tulane. I just have them one above Ole Miss because they did have that win against USC. They are losing Spears, who's their best player, but maybe a little bit under the radar. His backup, Cam Carroll, last year, he's actually part of the Florida Gators in Billy Napier's running back room. So they really lost their entire running back strength. However, their O-line is bringing back a lot of talent, and they do have a great defensive starting 11. And I think they got a linebacker from Louisiana. I don't know his name. I don't know. It was a long-ass name if I remember right. But they got a linebacker from Louisiana who should be good from the transfer portal. So I like Tulane. Can't put them too high up, because they lost a couple games last year and they were group of 5, and I really want to see it against Ole Miss. And I don't know how much USC was trying in that bowl game, but still, definitely off of last year, you got to rank them off of the teams that they beat. So Tulane is at 20, one above Ole Miss, but they once again have to beat Ole Miss to climb, or if they lose to Ole Miss, they're not going to get back in the power rankings probably until late in the year. That's just, we look at non-Power 5 schools in a different lens. So number 20 is Tulane. Moving on to number 19. And this is a team that a lot of people have ranked, so I think a lot of people are buying them, but it is a first-year coach, and that's the Wisconsin Badgers with Luke Fickell. They are adding Tanner Mordecai, who I did mention, and they are bringing back Allen. He needs to stay healthy. That's a must, but I think that Luke Fickell is a great fit, honestly. I can't really think of a better guy that they could have got to fit the style of Wisconsin football. I know Barry Alvarez is kind of starting to retire, I believe, or if he's not fully retired, so he's less the helm of the football program these days, but I think Luke Fickell could be up there with one of the best coaches they've had ever. He was great at Cincinnati, obviously. And so, yeah, when he unites with Tanner Mordecai, another guy that has a lot of experience, I mean, yeah, it's a first-year coach, but last year we saw a first-year coach go to the national championship game. And Fickell has already been to a playoff, so he's a pretty decent guy to bet on. But, I mean, you could argue that they should not be ranked because he hasn't shown anything yet, which, I mean, that's kind of fair. TCU wasn't ranked to start the season last year, so, yeah. And they also had 6 losses in 22, bad losses against Michigan State. I mean, I don't blame them for losing that much against Wazoo, but I think it was at home. So, yeah, they did have some questionable losses, but all in all, I think that they will have a much better season, and I'm expecting 8 or 9 wins. And they could definitely win the West, too. It'll probably be between them and Iowa, in my opinion. And so, yep, the number 19 Wisconsin Badgers. Maybe they're back. They need to rebound. And number 18, and this is the last team that I have on this segment of the quality teams before I move on to the contenders. I really was close to putting them in with the contenders, but I think they're a year away. I think this program is on the insanely monumental rise. But usually it's year 3 or so for coaches where they start popping off. So I don't have them in the contenders list. But to be fair, I'm not seeing them ranked on most people's top 25. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy for having these guys in there, but at number 18, I got the South Carolina Gamecocks, man. And if you're like, whoa, 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 hold up there, what? Because like you haven't seen them ranked, but like, who had a better finish to the season last year than the Gamecocks? I'm hearing crickets right now. I know I'm just talking to y'all, but I'm hearing crickets. South Carolina played spoiler in an epic fashion. And it seemed like Spence really started to get it, and they were just playing more fun football, playing more loose, playing more relaxed, and the turnovers weren't as much as an issue. So I think that they're just going to take that momentum and keep going. Keep on chugging. I think that the Gamecocks are getting severely underrated, and also with the addition of Knox, I know they lost Stogner, but also with the addition of Knox, I think that they got one of the better red zone weapons in the country. And yeah, I think the Gamecocks were an inch away from being a contender. And next episode, I'll give y'all the top 17, and then I'll give y'all the first few that I have out of either list who maybe you were expecting to be in the top 17. So, yep. Appreciate y'all. Stay up. Much love. Peace.